off, especially since it has been heavy rain since the last 2 days. The bandwidth is pretty low everywhere, so we would really request you to cooperate with us and keep your videos switched off. All your questions, we request you to post in the chat, uh, both here on Zoom as well as on YouTube. Uh, and Dr. Vivina will be taking the questions as and uh, at the end of the seminar, or if in between, if she thinks appropriate. Um, yeah, I think that's all that we have to say for now. I will hand over the stage to Mrs. Panchikar. Mrs. Apurva Panchikar, Assistant Professor, Department of Special Education. Ma'am, please take over.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Betty. It is indeed my privilege to welcome uh, Dr. Kumi Vivaina to this 8th webinar that we have. And participants, I am so delighted to introduce this wonderful, wonderful, highly dynamic, very multifaceted, and a versatile personality to you. You know, when you of course, you will be witnessing her, you will be able to hear her talk, her ideas, her views. But I think, you know, when I go through whatever she shared about herself that I can communicate with you, I'm just filled with awe. Ma'am, I'm truly, truly, truly happy, and I welcome you to this webinar. So participants, Dr. Kumi Vivaina, she is an education futurist, a TEDx speaker, internationally acclaimed educator, literary critic, teacher educator, writer, and storyteller. In October 2016, Dr. Vivaina retired as professor and head of the Department of English, University of Mumbai, and is now the founder director of Center for Connection Education and Management. She has 2 PhD degrees to her credit, one in literature and the other in education. She has published 11 books, 58 papers that have appeared in peer-reviewed national and international journals and critical anthologies. She has won numerous national and international awards and is a renowned speaker who delivers lectures and leads seminars and workshops for teachers and parents. She's passionate about teaching pedagogy and has been actively involved in curriculum designing at all levels, and has helped set up study centers in India and abroad. In 2013, her book on education, Sourceful Intelligence, Understanding Uniqueness and Oneness Through Education, was selected as among the 18 best books which are published in the USA. And in 2013, this happened in 2013. And her most recent book, What Children Critically Want, has received critical acclaim from educators, psychologists, parents, writers from all over the world, and even the Dalai Lama. In August-September 2015, she was selected by the world leaders in education. Just a minute, sorry. World leaders in education as one of the 35 women across the world changing educational paradigms, and was asked to present a paper at the international conference in the University of Waikato in Hamilton, New Zealand. Dr. Vivaina has her own storytelling organization called Wordfully Yours, which hosts storytelling programs and conducts training workshops on storytelling for enhancing eco-literacy, social literacy, and psycholiteracy. We are indeed fortunate to have you, ma'am, to talk to us about the life skills for teachers in the post-pandemic era. I request you to please take the stage, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Apurva. Thank you, Dr. Sujata Ban and team of SNDT. I'm delighted to see that Teachers Help Teachers has also cooperated on this initiative. And I began my journey with SNDT when I did my PhD under Dr. Shirin Kuchepka, my literature thesis. So SNDT is very, very dear to me, and I'm always delighted to be a part of the programs. So with this short introduction, please don't feel intimidated by any of the things they've said about me. Feel absolutely free to ask any number of questions. Even my topic, life skills for educators post-COVID, sometimes feels like shooting in the dark. We don't know what COVID and how COVID is going to end, but still, we need to imagine the future. So I will quickly start sharing my screen, and do let me know if you can see it. Is my screen visible? Is my screen visible to you?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
And can you hear me clearly?
Yes, ma'am. A bit of disturbance, but that's fine considering the weather and everything. It's
Can you
fine.
hear my voice clearly?
Yes, ma'am.
Give me a minute.
Sure.
I'm just wondering if this is better. This is better?
Yes, yes.
Sound-wise, is it better?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
fine. So let's start. Life skills for teachers post-COVID. As I said a moment ago, we need to start thinking of what life will look like after COVID. Being a literature person, I cannot but help start with a quotation, some wonderful lines from William Butler Yeats's poem, The Second Coming. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. This seems to be a current predicament, where things have fallen apart, where all social systems have fallen apart. The center cannot hold, and we all seem to be groping in the dark. But it depends entirely on us whether we want to see this as the darkness of the tomb or the darkness of the womb. As a popular saying goes, it's always darkest before dawn. So being an optimist, and not an infantile optimist, but being a genuine optimist who also considers the situations, I feel very strongly that all that we've been dreaming of doing, we can actually do in the post-COVID world. And I hope you are with me on the same page. So my presentation today is divided into two parts. Part one, do we teachers have the capacity to usher in the change that is necessary? I'm not critiquing anyone or anything. What I want to ask is that do we have the resources just now to deal with the situation after COVID? And how do we prepare to teach in post-COVID times is a second part. Part one, online learning. These days, online learning has become our savior during the pandemic. How would we teach? How would we reach out to our students were it not for online classes? But we need to be a little cautious. We know in our heart of hearts that online teaching cannot go on forever. It has its limitations. We know the wonderful things that technology can do for us. We know, for instance, just take one small example. What can drones do for us? There is a brilliant video which tells us that drones can plant 100,000 trees in one day. But then drones can also be used for killing, and killing so efficiently that there is no way of getting caught. It's important to know that, like everything else that we human beings have created, technology too has its bright side and its dark side. If you like, in psychological terms, its ego side and its shadow side. In the blink of an eye, technology can move from magic to manic to toxic. And we know this. Einstein very pertinently observed, the human spirit must prevail over technology. And I think this is a truth we need to bear in mind. At present, we are fascinated by what can happen. Even the very idea of this webinar, that we can sit in our own homes and discuss things, amazing. But we should not allow technology to take over. Our aim as educators should be very clear. Are we wanting to make our students more humane human beings, humane in the sense of kinder, more compassionate? Or are we wanting to make them into more efficient operators and inventors of machines? Way back, almost a century ago, the novelist D.H. Lawrence, in one of his letters, observed, "For God's sake, let us be men, not monkeys minding machines or sitting with our tails curled while the machine amuses us." We know that many of us have become overly dependent on machines. Futurist Gerd Leonard, he very carefully observes that humanity will change more in the next 20 years than it has in the previous 300 years. But we cannot let technology trump humanity. Humanity must come first. Therefore, my belief is that as educators, we should focus on creating more humane human beings. All the information that we today is available at the flick of a button, which does not mean we don't do any learning. We do need to be good in our particular area of expertise. But mugging or learning by rote is no longer required. In the first part now, I'm going to deal with the question, do we teachers have the capacity to usher in the change that is necessary? Now, if this were an interactive session, I would be asking you questions, taking your opinions, but there isn't time. In about 40 minutes, I have to conclude this session and then take your questions. There is a very beautiful song in the latter half of the previous century which said, "Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me." So like everything, even good teaching for change must begin with us. Mother Teresa was once asked if she would join an anti-war campaign. And she said, "No way. I will join a pro-peace campaign." And you would say, but this is merely juggling words and playing around with words. No, the psychology is completely different. You are not anti something which is undesirable, but you are pro something which is desirable. Therefore, teachers, all the change that we want to see in the world must begin with us. I love telling this story because it's just so pertinent, the 100th monkey. Anthropologists on different islands in Japan were observing monkey behavior. On one island, the anthropologists noticed that there was a little monkey who was always the leader, and they called her Emo. One day, Emo took her sweet potato, which the anthropologist would give her. She washed it in water and popped it in her mouth. And it tasted nicer without the mud and grime. And all her little friends started imitating her. And finally, even the adults caught on. As a stage aside, you'd agree with me that adults catch on late, but never mind that. So the entire monkey colony started washing sweet potatoes. Now you'd say, well, no big deal. They were imitating each other. No, there was something very special that happened. Anthropologists on other islands started reporting that all the monkeys started washing their sweet potatoes. What happened? Rupert Sheldrake, the scientist, very simply explains this with his morphic field theory. If anywhere between 5 and 33.4% of a species repeat a gesture, it becomes a part of the collective unconscious. You and I may or may not be the initiator emo, but by repeating that thought, by repeating that action, we are contributing towards change. Therefore, every single teacher is important to bring about this change. Metaphorically, we may be the 10th monkey, 25th monkey, 98th monkey, but when the 100th monkey metaphorically repeats it, the tipping point is reached and change must happen. In the 60s, when those interested in nuclear disarmament were shouting loud and clear, people said impossible. Now it's a reality. Again, in the 60s, when the ecological movement came up, people were branded as stupid tree huggers. Now, I do not think there's a single human being who can say we can trash the planet and get away with it. Why? Because the tipping point was reached. So, teachers, you and I can work together and help reach the tipping point in education, and change must happen. This is a law of nature. So what mindset are we currently operating from? Do we have the mindset? Sorry, I don't mean this term as derogatory. I'll explain it in a moment. Are we operating from an idiot frame of mind, from a tribesman form of mind, or from a citizen's point of mind? The ancient Greeks believed that when you think only of yourself, you think like an idiot. They call such people idiots. When you think about your narrow group, my family, my tribe, my community, my language, even my nation, then you operate from the tribesman psychology. But when you move outside and think of the good of others, as well as your own good, of course, it includes the other two, then you are a true citizen. This is what the Greeks believed. Very, very powerfully, this has also been reinforced by current thinkers who urge us to move from an egocentric intimacy, me and mine alone, to an ethnocentric, the same as a tribe or the small community, to the nation, to the world, and finally, to a cosmocentric intimacy. The cosmocentric intimacy, this mindset will help us move from being Homo sapiens to the next level of evolution, which is Homo amor. So we teachers need to work to transform our consciousness. This is the missing piece in the puzzle, according to me. Jiddu Krishnamurti, whom I've always deeply, deeply revered, has talked about a revolution in consciousness. And he says this is the only revolution which will bring lasting peace, because it will help us understand ourselves. Know thyself, Atma Gyan. This is ancient advice which we have barely heeded. Read this in Insights to Education by Jiddu Krishnamurti. More recently, YUVAL Noah Harari in 21 Lessons for the 21st Century also reiterates this fact. He says a change in consciousness is more necessary now than ever before, and that for each rupee or dollar that we spend on developing technology, the next should be developed on changing consciousness. But to most of us, this word consciousness seems fairly nebulous, seems fairly airy-fairy. So let's try and define it as best as we can. Even today, educational thinkers are barely giving any thought to the development of consciousness necessary for educators to teach effectively in the post-COVID era. By consciousness, I could very briefly say Let's stop identifying ourselves as so and so by our name first, then our gender, then our community, then our nation, then the continent, and then maybe the world, and then the spirit. If we reverse it, if we reverse this and start thinking of ourselves as spirit first, global citizen next, and so on and so forth, everything about our thinking changes. This is what I mean by a change in consciousness. Educators need to develop sourceful intelligence. And what is sourceful intelligence? Very briefly, I define it in my book as the unique capacity that we human beings have to understand and experience both our uniqueness and our oneness. I'll be very brief with you. We are unique human beings. You have a different set of talents and intelligences from me. All the differences are in the upper layer of the mind. At the deeper layer of the mind, we are essentially one. This idea is so vital to education. Everything can change if we transition ourselves and help our students to transition from a self versus other consciousness, me versus you, to me and you, self and other consciousness, to a point when there is no other and all is self. Now, this seems a slightly fanciful idea, but I will reinforce it in a moment with reference to science. Einstein, with his theory of relativity and all, somehow still had that self versus other consciousness, because he believed that we are essentially passive observers living in a universe that is already in place. Self versus other. His fellow scientist, John Wheeler, believed differently. He believed that the old world observer can be replaced by the new world participator. What does this mean? I'll again try and be very simple. According to Wheeler, energy manifests as a wave or as a particle, depending on the consciousness of the observer. You co-create reality. I know this is a new age term, but this is exactly the term that scientists are also using today. We co-create our reality because we are not merely observers, but participants in the entire process. David Bohm, who is often referred to as Einstein's grandson, very pertinently felt that at the level of the explicit order, we are all different. You are different from me. My table, my chair, my glass, my bottle, everything seems different. At this explicit level, we see differences. But at the deeper implicit level, we are essentially one. We are energetically interconnected. And this is a scientific truth which quantum physics talks about. So the whole idea in education is that we should move ourselves first and then our students from polarity consciousness to unity consciousness. To do this, everything in education needs to be overhauled and reformed. But we have the time now to press the restart button. With that, I move on to part 2 of my presentation. How do we prepare to teach in the post-COVID era? My emphasis in this presentation is entirely on us as educators. I'm not talking about the methodology, the assessment, and other things. They're very, very important. But I'm saying, let there be peace on earth, let there be change on earth, let it begin with me. So self-scrutiny is the first step. We all know the 9 intelligences that Howard Gardner has mapped. Which of these 9 intelligences are we strong in? What is our specific configuration of those intelligences? How does it differ from that of our colleagues? When teaching in Kuwait, I I actually put teachers with different configurations together and asked them to create one lesson plan. Initially, of course, there was a lot of hesitancy, a lot of resistance. What they came up with was magic. Because I may be strong as a verbal linguistic and as a musical and maybe interpersonal, intrapersonal, you may have a different set of intelligences. And when we come together, we can create magic, because we'll be addressing that many intelligences in the classroom, even if we are teaching in the traditional way, even if we are. So the first step is that in what way am I intelligent? In what way, therefore, am I deficient? Because all my lesson planning and everything is going to be based on my strengths rather than my limitations. But my students may have a different set of skills, learning styles. How do I reach out to them? If I know, for instance, that I'm spatially weak, I can approach a colleague who is spatially strong and say, how do I bring this notion across for my visual spatial students in the classroom, right? So step one, in what ways am I intelligent? Now, I won't be able to elaborate on Silverman's concept in great detail, but what is my mode of processing my information? Even the way we process our information is different. For instance, I'm very strongly verbal linguistic, but when I process my information, it's also very strongly visual spatial. So visual spatial learners, auditory sequential learners, and tactile kinesthetic learners learn in very different ways. So what am I? What is my strength? What is my way of processing information? That we need to teach our children critical thinking, creative thinking, all the C's, right? Change orientation, then communication excellence, etc., collaboration, so on and so forth. We'll take each one of them in turn. We focus a lot on critical or linear thinking. And we say that analysis, interpretation, inference, evaluation, all these are extremely important. I do not deny that. Critical thinking is vital for our survival as a species. It is only one form of thinking. We do not always think in linear ways, in critical ways. So alongside critical thinking, I urge you to also think of developing associative thinking and unitive thinking. I'll give you very quick examples. When we think critically, we think in a very straightforward cause and effect linear way. When computer probes were put on the heads of people and they were encouraged to think critically, the probe showed perfect geometric patterns. But when they were encouraged to think in different ways, in associative ways, the computer probes looked like the roots of trees, latching on to one at one point, changing, latching on to something else, very organic. And we do think in these ways. You can call it lateral, you can call it by 100 other names. But though critical thinking is important, associative thinking and making those links with all the hooks and eyes coming together is also vital. We realize that even when we are writing an essay or an answer, we want certain points to flow one after the other. That's critical. But then making the linkages between them is associative thinking. And unitive thinking, which creates 40 hertz brain cycles, is the highest form of thinking that human beings are capable of. So though we are told to concentrate on critical, I urge you to also first develop these three skills within yourself and look at a problem from these three angles. Creative thinking. Sir Ken Robinson, he defines creativity as a process of having original ideas that have value. Anything and everything new and wacky need not be created. It can also result in some awful things. A while ago in Ireland, there was a song celebrating suicide. And in a village where that song was very, very popular, they noticed that several young adolescents committed suicide and they linked it to that song. So creativity is something which has value, and importantly, it's a process. It may come as a light bulb flash, but then it requires a lot of critical thinking and discipline. That brings me to the second point, that creative thinking includes critical thinking, because what we're doing there is we are analyzing, we dissect and dissipate in order to recreate. So creative thinking is vitally important for any kind of innovation. And we also need to realize as teachers that there is a difference between teaching creatively and teaching for creativity. When we are teaching creatively, we are still very teacher-centric. Oh, I have some brilliant ideas and I'm going to bring in this and I'm going to bring in that and I'm going to make my teaching very exciting. That is teaching creatively. But what is even more important is that we encourage children to teach, to think creatively. So we teach for creativity. That's a totally different ballgame. We also need to develop a very strong change orientation in our young learners. And even we need to be adaptable. We need to be flexible. We may be doing something one way today and we may be asked to do it in an entirely different way tomorrow. As again, Yuval Noah Harari says, today we have super intelligent machines. We have engineered bodies. Up to now, all that went on was outside the human body, but now we have implants inside the human body, augmented human beings. We have algorithms that manipulate our emotions with absolute precision. And we may have to change our profession every 10 years or even earlier. So for that, we need to have this change mindset, change orientation. All right, if this doesn't work, that will work. And for that, we need what Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset, resilience, strength, humor, the capacity to say, all right, if this is not going to work, I'm going to do something different. And even we teachers need to do something very, very different all the time. So we are living in a very exciting time where we can change, the world changes, our children change us, and we are constantly through a process of osmosis affecting each other. The other skills that I've talked about and which have been marked in green earlier are also vital skills. Compassion and empathy is absolutely vital. It's not optional anymore. The Dalai Lama in talk after talk is talking about the need for compassionate leaders. And I think we really need them. Empathy is something that Daniel Goleman talks about ever so eloquently. So awareness of our own strengths and weaknesses and the ability to manage ourselves is vital to us teachers. We need to cultivate within us the 24 character strengths that positive psychologists Martin Seligman and Christopher talk about. We need to find happiness and resilience within, Christopher Peterson talk about. We need to find happiness and resilience within us. Only then will we be, I'm not talking about the role models, even then the children will pick up these things from us. So self-awareness and self-regulation, to my mind, leads to deep sensitivity to the issues faced by other people. And that in turn results in service orientation rooted in allophilia and empathy. You may be slightly unfamiliar with this word allophilia. When you say, oh, she's very tolerant, that's not a nice word. Tolerance is being at point zero. I'm neither this way nor this way. Okay, you're fine the way you are. I'm fine the way I am. But allophilia is when you empathetically step into the shoes of the others imaginatively with that superpower called imagination. And you try and understand the reality of the other person. And then you function from a position of ethics. So I think this is vital in the post-COVID world. Now, again, most thinkers are talking about collaboration. Collaboration is the ability to work collaboratively, but we also need to develop the ability to work independently and courageously and sometimes against convention. That is what is called field independence. So if we have that capacity within us to work both collaboratively and field independently, once again, it will rub off on our learners. Collaboration triggers original thinking. It goes without saying that we human beings are hardwired not for competition, but for collaboration. So communication excellence. Again here, communicate effectively, forming what Michael Lee Stallard, the management guru, calls connection cultures. We know that today we give feedback to our students in a very different way from the way we used to earlier. 7 on 10, whatever that meant, 9 on 10, 2 on 10. But now we work more towards connecting with our learners when we try and give them feedback. Communication excellence includes the ability to express ideas clearly and effectively. It also includes the ability to express ideas in a way which is thoughtful and will trigger the kind of results that we are looking for, being mindful of the thoughts and feelings of others. In this way, we can create a shift from education systems to learning ecosystems. I'm not juggling words. The word system suggests rigidity. Well, you can juggle a few things around, but it's still a system. There is still a hierarchy. Can we move from calling it an education system to a learning ecosystem? The very metaphor of an ecosystem suggests interconnectedness, suggests a give and take. The earlier model, the education system model, is rooted in lack. You guys don't know something, I am here to fill you in. It's rooted in lack. Madame Montessori, Rudolf Steiner, and many, many great thinkers have been always warning us that children come to the earth with so many gifts, so much of creativity. Let's honor that. We can honor that only if we think in terms of learning ecosystem, where we give and take, and the teacher is a co-learner, and we partner in the learning process. Only then can the 17 goals, the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals that the United Nations came up with, only then can they be achieved by 2030. I would like to end with my favorite saying from one of my favorite writers, Elizabeth Barrett Browning: "Earth's crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God, but only he who sees takes off his shoes. The others sit around and pluck berries." Teachers, we cannot be berry pickers anymore. We can bring heaven down to earth, because it is only a mindset change which will bring this about. So thank you very much for your attention, and I will have all the answers to your questions, but I will try. Thank you.
Yes. Kumi, that was fantastic. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Sujata.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So engaging. You are such a prolific orator. It was just mind-blowing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So much to learn, so much to inculcate, so much to imbibe in ourselves when we are in the class. We need to change. We need to change from
And
that conventional style
within us, the
within
change
us. Absolutely.
everyone is focusing on what we are going to do out there. But
Correct.
to do something effectively out there, we need to change things in here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'd be happy to take questions if
Yes.
there
Yes.
are. I hope
Yes.
there
Yes.
are.
Yes. I'm sure. I'm sure.
Dr. Vivana, actually, I think everyone is literally again awestruck with the kind of deliberations and the kind of thoughts that you have given us. That I think everyone's gray cells at this point, they are completely fried, and they're just wondering what is it that we have heard. Because I think many of us would have come in with the understanding that probably when you're going to be talking about the life skills, you would be talking again about communication, collaboration, critical thinking, all the C's and all the 21st century skills. And, probably give something which is very concrete that, this is one thing that you do and you will be able to deal with COVID-19. And you do another this thing and you will be able to be a better teacher. Learn this particular thing and you will be able to do something. I think you have actually set the ball rolling for each one of us, be it in the shoes of teachers, be it in the shoes of teacher educators, be it in the shoes of counselors or whoever, even as just individuals who may not have the, I would say, who are not professionals, that it requires complete shift in the way we have experienced the world, the way we have been processing this information about the world that we have been interacting in, and the way it needs to be done. I really love this whole idea about us of sourceful intelligence. I was I have not read that book of yours. Very truly, I didn't even know what it could mean. I was just trying to guess at the word, and of course, it gave me no understanding of what it is. But I truly feel that this sourceful intelligence should. I think as a teacher educator, I think I should take it to my classroom. It is one thing which has appealed to me after probably the way Gardner has appealed to me as a person who talks about how you need to be able to reach out to your children and reach out to your students. Another thing that very which touched me immensely is looking at the same theory given by Gardner from a teacher perspective. Probably when we have done collaborations and you've spoken about team teaching and co-teaching practices, it has only been with regard to am I a content expert in one, and do I need a collaborative or a cooperative effort from my colleague who knows something else better? But we have never thought about multiple intelligences for teachers. So whether I am high on verbal linguistic and whether my colleague is good with probably a musical or a logical mathematical, and how do I collaborate on those fronts? This is something which we had never thought. So I think you have given us a very different meaning to collaborations.
I think collaboration very actually creates magic because you are shedding your ego and you are saying, oh, you have this skill, let's bring it in. And finally, the end result is an extremely rich lesson plan. And that lesson plan is addressing the multiple intelligences of the students. So you have every single student in class who is attentive and who's involved in the learning process. So it's a total win-win situation.
Absolutely. And another thing that I feel is that when we are looking at these kinds of collaborations, be it cooperative learning activities or be it collaborations amongst teachers, we actually are helping our students and ourselves to start off moving from the idiots to the tribesmen to the citizens. Because today we talk about education being to create citizenship. However, I think citizenship is not just the way we understand that in civics and the way it is prescribed in probably our constitution. It is about feeling and understanding where it means or how it means to be humane and how it means to understand by being empathetic and being able to put yourself into someone else's shoes and thus create this unity consciousness that you have been talking about.
And if you would allow me, just pardon my biases, my own biases, I'm human. I very strongly believe that STEM is not the answer. Along with STEM, I have come up with something which I call H-teams. The word STEM makes you think in isolation: science, technology, engineering, maths. Humanities, then of course we have the science, technology, we also have the arts.
Yes.
The arts are vital because the arts tell you how to reach out with empathy to understand other people. I never understood anyone with mental illness, but when I read Tennessee Williams' Streetcar Named Desire, I felt so much of pathos. I started looking at mentally ill people from a completely different angle. So the arts are extremely important. As I say, if you merely want to create people who are good operators or inventors of machine, then your STEM is fine. But if you want to make them into whole human beings, W-H-O-L-E, not a H-O-L-E, a vada pav. I'm not talking about a meruada, but whole human beings, then the arts and literature and the humanities are extremely important. And in our new education policy, we talk about multidisciplinary. So that really presupposes that we have all these skills. Do we really have these skills to function in multidisciplinary ways?
Ma'am, now that you're talking about even the need to move from STEM to probably STEAM and something more, I'm able to link this to what you said about how we need to change and how we need to move from a very, very linear and very analytic thinking to being more creative, more critical, and thus being able to, look at all situations, look at each experience from many, many perspectives. And being able to do that probably will make us this multifaceted, again, I would say, and it would give you a very, very strong humane touch to it, because again we are seeing that there's so much of the advent of technology, we are again thinking about what we want to be.
I don't need to propagate my own thinking, but forgive me for saying this. In my book, Sourceful Intelligence, and in my subsequent book, What Children Really Want, and in my TEDx talks also, I talked about a process of thinking, which I call technopoesis, which will take you from the self versus other to a self and other to an all is self. The first step is relevance. Why am I studying this? Why do I need to study Shakespeare, who wrote 450 years ago in Dida Doda? All right, but if I tell you the relevance and make you realize the relevance and you're motivated, then you're inspired. I don't like the word motivated. Motivation comes from outside, inspiration comes from within. So I have 7 stages. And if you take your learners through the 7 stages, you're automatically interlinking. Interlinking is the 4th stage, where you bring in art, dance, drama, science, technology, math, anything, any of the other disciplines. So to create that kind of technopoetic lesson plan, I need to connect with others. That's why I said in Kuwait, when I introduced technopoesis, the teachers needed others because I know nothing about some of the other subjects. So let's work together. And when the synergy is so beautiful. And even as you rightly said, the children, our learners feel, oh, wow, here are teachers working as teams, and so can we. So it's really amazing what comes out from technopoesis when you're doing it in the classroom. And it can be done at any level. And in my book, What Children Really Want, it's even at home, that in a very informal, fun way, you can do technopoesis, technology, combining technology and left brain with right brain poesis and myth. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Sujata.
Okay. No, yeah, I was just, listening to this conversation. I'm only concerned right now, there is so much of emphasis of technology, in teaching, at home, everybody's with their phones all the time reading, or in their even social interaction, everything is centering around the phones. So where do you see, where are we going in times to come? We are getting more and more distant from people. The human touch is reducing. If you see what it was 5 years back, 10 years back, we hardly meet people. We'll just pick up the phone and talk to people and live in this techno world. So
Absolutely.
now with this COVID, people have become so paranoid. I don't know for how long it's going to continue and how long that fear is going to still stay. So where are we going when we talk about that human interaction?
I think what you're saying is extremely important, because COVID has given a leg up to technology. None of us could do even this without technology. So we are realizing the magic of it. But I said very quickly, it can turn from magic to manic to toxic.
Toxic. I feel toxic.
Yes, absolutely. Because
no connect.
Yeah, we don't connect. That's very true. The best and the most powerful kind of learning that happens is in a social setting. So as soon as possible, we should think in terms of blended classrooms, see what technology can do.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
let technology do the bits it can. But then in class, what do we do? How do we make learning exciting, social? That is our challenge now as educators.
Yes.
And I think we'll be able to come up with it. We're pretty smart.
Yes.
We will be able to come up with something.
Yes. I think it's much more challenging for teachers to now take it like, as a huge challenge to get the students back into the classrooms.
Absolutely. And as I say there, the story that I narrated of the 100th monkey is based on fact. So it's extremely vital that we see ourselves as vitally important in the change that is going to come about in the world. Not to say, oh, the policymakers will make the change, the management will make the change. No, each and every one of us is responsible. As a head of the department in my university, I made a rule to my students. If you have a complaint, tell me about it, but come up with 2 solutions as well.
Yes.
So let's just work together. I mean, I think it's thinking about our personal egos and all is just passé. Yeah. If we stick to that, we will really create a dystopia. Whereas if we think in terms of unity consciousness, getting together, all like-minded people working together, we will create a change.
Absolutely.
Ma'am, a question has come in. One of the participants wants to know as to how we can enhance the skill of multitasking in students. How do we help the students multitask?
I know a lot is made of multitasking. It is regarded as a virtue. I'm not sure if it's always a virtue. At times, total focus and concentration is vital. At other times, you may be able to multitask. Like for instance, I may be able to cook and listen to music and all of that. But when I'm sitting and writing or when I'm planning a session, I need to be 100% focused. So personally, I wouldn't make much of multitasking. It comes to some people very naturally and it doesn't come to people. And I don't think it's something which can be taught. It just comes very naturally to some people. And that's my opinion, but I may be wrong. I don't overrate multitasking.
Okay. Participants, are there any more questions? Because ma'am, all that I can see is participants are saying it's a
wonderful session and they want her back.
Enriched session.
And they want her back.
Mindset. They have changed the mindset. And even I truly feel that, you have moved most of us from the state where we had, now in a way settled that, okay, since March we have been in the lockdown. And this is how we have evolved our own system of being able to teach our students. But now, is there something more that we can do? And absolutely, I think we can, because you have enthused us with this whole philosophy, I would say again, that be the change that you want to see. If you know that certain aspects of our whole teaching learning environments and this learning ecosystem that we are attempting to create are not conducive to the way you think it should be going, probably think it through, be creative, collaborate, discuss with your fellow teachers, because they are in the same conundrum that you are.
And even if you disagree with someone, it's fine to disagree.
Absolutely.
But learn to do it in an assertive and in a very polite manner, and not in an aggressive manner. Oh, she didn't take my idea. So what? Every idea that comes to me is not a brainwave, and it needn't be accepted by everyone. So a certain amount of humility, that's why I feel cultivating spiritual intelligence in teachers, emotional, social, and spiritual intelligence in teachers is vital. Absolutely vital. We go on mouthing. Gandhiji said, be the change to see the change. Wow. Everyone says that. Everyone. If you guys are serious in being the change, come and be a part of my Global Tipping Point Summit, and Sujata ma'am will tell you all about it. So we are serious about it. We really want to see change, because we can go on being what Amartya Sen calls the argumentative Indian and talk till the cows come home, and well, a few cosmetic changes here and there. No, the age for cosmetic changes is over. And therefore, as I said, maybe COVID is a period when it's darkest before dawn. And with dawn, we can create an entirely new day and an entirely new world.
Apurva, there are a couple of questions if we can ask.
Yes.
Yeah.
The questions have started coming in now.
They must be in awe of the presentation.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I'll just go through the questions the way I can see them just now in the chat box. So one of the participants would want to know, what is blended teaching?
What is?
Blended teaching. I think you refer to blended teaching.
Blended teaching.
Yes.
Yeah. Where we do a certain amount of teaching as face-to-face in the classroom, and we use technology. We use our own, creating a buddy system and other things, but at the same time, we also bring them to class. Maybe they don't need to be in class for that long. Now, in a country like Finland, for instance, kids are in class for only 3 hours a day. But I think those 3 hours are also vital, because as Dr. Barnes says, we cannot be finally monkeys minding machines. We can't just work with the machines. We have to work with human beings and not lose the human touch. And most of the, actually even Ken Robinson talks about how your best ideas very often come from a social situation. You may have heard something and then you recollect it in tranquility, and suddenly the hooks and eyes fit and you get a new idea. So bouncing off ideas and that synergy that happens in a classroom situation cannot be ever possible
never.
online, according to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Absolutely.
Ma'am, one more question, which says, how do you improve humanity for the future generations?
That's starting with yourself. Starting with yourself. Today, am I a better human being than what I was yesterday? And that involves a lot of self-reflexivity. If I got angry, I don't like getting angry. So how can I do it differently? Just working on yourself, understanding yourself. In my book, What Children Really Want, I have this whole first 4 chapters where I take you through the different levels of the mind, from the unconscious to the personal unconscious, to the collective unconscious, to the deep self. And as you are, and it's full of all kinds of activities that you can do on your own. So as you are going through this process, you are looking only at yourself. If I change, then let me put it very simply. Can an angry person be effective in a peace movement? If I have to be effective, I have to work towards my own peace. That's why the quote, "Let there be peace on earth, let it begin with me." An angry person cannot create peace. You find that there are thousands of social workers also. They are wonderful. They're doing amazing things. But then among themselves, there is so much of katti and batti. Why? You need to work on yourself to understand from what position and at what level of consciousness are you operating from. Are you doing it with some hidden agenda, which may be even hidden to you? So a lot, the mind is very tricky, and the mind is not here, by the way. That's only the brain. The mind is all over in every cell of your body. So the mind can really trick you into believing, oh, I'm doing it for the good of others. Well, stop, ask yourself, are you? Are you? And you may get a very different answer. Something there says, I have a little bit to gain from that. So looking at yourself, scrutinizing your behavior, scrutinizing your words, thinking of how you can be more effective by being a better person. Once you are a better person, others will change. There's a very simple story. Do we have time for that?
Yes, of course.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
Once upon a
Yes,
time,
ma'am.
there was a man who decided he had a brilliant idea of changing the world. And he tried to sell that idea in India. No takers. So he went to United States. Till recently, before Trump, the land with milk and honey blessed. So he tried to sell his ideas there. No takers. Then he said, oh, these Yankees, they don't know anything. I'm going to the land of tradition and culture, which is Europe, and they'll accept my ideas there. No takers. Okay, maybe Rudyard Kipling was right. The East is East and the West is West. I'll go to the East. No takers. I'll go back to India. No takers. Go back to my village. No takers. I'll at least convince my family to change. No takers. Finally, he got irritated and changed himself. And the story goes, once he changed himself, his family asked, hey, dude, what's this? How are you different? And they learned, and then the village learned, and so on and so forth.
Wow.
We are
Wow.
so happy seeing flaws in the world that we jump to change them. Stop, pause, think. How can I change? Because once I change, everything around me changes. So that's really very important, that if you want to make your students more humane, you mustn't demonstrate humanity. I'm not saying demonstrate. Children are so quick. They are almost like little dogs. They will smell out inauthenticity. You have to be that. You have to be humane for them to be humane.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Vivina. There is another question.
Yeah.
Venkata Mahalakshmi wants to know as to what is the way of or how should we move from a teaching atmosphere to a learning atmosphere? Other
Very
than, one giving project work or teamwork, how else can we move from teaching atmosphere to learning atmosphere?
This is very, very powerful, but it would require a seminar of 4 days. Let me just try and tell you what my understanding is in brief. When you are thinking of teaching, the teacher occupies center stage. So even if you've got a whole lot of a bag of tricks, as I call it, I'm going to try this pedagogy, that pedagogy, this pedagogy, that pedagogy, the teacher still occupies center stage. Whereas if you are willing to move from being the sage on the stage to a guide on the side, then you will work out your objectives very clearly. What is my objective? Why do I want the kids to learn this? Then, along with those objectives, you will break it down as much as you can. You will specify the kind of skills you want them to have at the end of that class. You will create learning and not teaching situations. You will give them the kind of resources or direct them to the kind of resources which will encourage them to learn in their own distinct ways. Some will learn verbal linguistically, some will, when you're doing co-teaching, for instance, and you have different stations, then you go to a teacher who is very powerful in that particular learning style. But we can't afford that. We can barely afford one teacher. Where are we going to afford 6 and 7 teachers? That's okay. But if you allow the children by giving them a wide variety of tasks that they can choose from to learn the same unit. Then you give a complete breakdown and tell them that this is how you assess yourself. You assess yourself, you give yourself marks. I will then give you marks, assess you, and then we'll compare. Now, when you do this kind of thing, you are really working with the learner and you are seeing yourself as merely a facilitator or a guide. Whereas if you are just teaching, however exciting your teaching techniques may be, some will not get it. In the Upanishad, there is a lovely story about Brigu and Varuni and how the child is taken to a higher level, one stage at a time. That's what we teachers need to do. Now, you may be at level 4, so I have to take you to level 5. Now you'll say, well, I have a large class. How can that be possible? No, if I've given you a learning schema, if I'm giving you the objectives, if you are doing your ratings, and all it means is discussion once a month, once in 3 months, and that becomes a learning situation rather than a teaching. I may be teaching, I don't know how many have got it.
It's amazing. I think you've done a very, very, apt job of giving the difference between a teaching environment or a teaching atmosphere and the learning atmosphere. Thank you so much. We have a question from Tamar AC. She says that Dr. Vivina, I heard S.N. Goenkaji from the Vipassana meditation of the Global Pagoda say what you said relating to the mind and the inner peace as source of universal peace. Do you agree to this?
Absolutely. That's the only way. That's the only way. And COVID has taught us that all the things that we valued, all our position, power, cars, jewelry, nothing matters. Nothing matters. COVID does not say, I'm not going to hit Prince Charles. It hits Prince Charles equally. So COVID has been a great leveler. And it has brought certain things to our notice. King Lear in Shakespeare's play realizes that though he's a king, he's not ache-proof. Ache-proof is a fever-proof. Ache is fever. So we have also come to realize that we are not ache-proof. We are vulnerable. We are human. We are asked to maintain social distance, and yet our heart reaches out to people who are suffering. And most of us are trying to do as much as we can. So I think COVID has been a great leveler in that sense. And I would really agree with you that the only redemption is to understand what Swami Vivekananda so powerfully said, that man is a mixture of animality, humanity, and spirituality. If we deny that, if we say, no, I'm not the spiritual kind, it's like trying to lift a heavy table with one hand behind your back. And it's going to be hard. But you have a second hand, use it. The choice is yours.
True. Beautiful. I think, we would just want to listen to you more and more and more. And it's amazing that, the participants are asking questions which are enriching us, because
Enriching me too.
because we are getting to hear something more. However, everything that is related to what you've been talking about. So we also have Rashna Sadri, who wants to know your opinion on the theory of mindfulness, because that's a term that you're hearing very, very often these days.
Well, I have my reservations about mindfulness. I think it's extremely important that we are mindful of ourselves and mindful of others. The main idea of Takni Khan being loving kindness. This is exactly what the world needs. It doesn't have to stop at that. It needs to move towards expanded consciousness, what I have called, and what Ken Wilber calls, cosmocentric intimacy. Not just stopping at people, not just stopping at animals and other sentient beings, but going way beyond that to an expanded consciousness. Because when you operate from an expanded consciousness, you really can't go wrong. You really can't go wrong. And it comes effortlessly. It comes effortlessly. But we have been trained because our entire social system is rooted in competition. And right from the time we are babies, we ask, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Who cares who's the fairest of them? So first fairest, then smartest, then brightest. Children come into the school with parents having mollycoddled them for 2.5, 3 years, and they are told, oh, my baby is so special. My baby can sing, my baby can dance, my baby can do anything, even walk on water probably. But the minute the child enters and crosses the threshold of the school, from being remarkable, the child becomes remarkable.
Wow.
From being extraordinary, the child suddenly becomes ordinary. And even the parents start viewing the child with reference to the marks the child obtains. And the fun of it is that I was declared a dud, 29th out of 35 students, and I'd be thrilled with life. And my report cards would read, Kumi looks at the water filter as if her life depends on it. So maybe the water filter preserved my sanity. I don't know. Nobody regarded me as remarkable. And today people are saying, oh, we thought you wouldn't even clear SSC. One teacher fired my imagination. One teacher, and my life changed. So I felt that if my life could change with that one teacher, then we need inspiration teachers. Just to content anymore. We need inspiration. So yes, what Goenka said, mindfulness, these are things we need to cultivate. And these have been part of our tradition. And I'm not being nationalistic by saying Indian tradition. It's been part of all ancient people all over the world. We've lost touch with that. We need to know how to really move now from a self versus other to an all is self. So if I'm getting mad at you, I'm actually getting mad at myself, which is not too smart. So the matrix model, and the matrix model is not something that I'm talking about. It's what quantum physics is talking about.
There are a few questions. Betty, do we have time? Or as we have done in the
Um,
past, we can definitely send these questions to Dr. Vivina, and we can then
yes,
communicate to the participants the responses that ma'am has given us. With
If you
that,
want, I
yes,
could
yes,
answer
we
them
can
very
definitely do that.
quickly. Would you want them to be answered very quickly? I'll try for that.
Betty,
If you want, entirely up to you.
Ma'am, I think we can take one more question and the remaining we can mail to ma'am.
Okay.
You know what? People are really interested in listening to her. So if she has time, I think let the participants have the pleasure of hearing her till we get her again. So if she doesn't mind, we can take a couple of questions. And all. Yeah. So I know because everybody is completely engrossed in it and they would love to. Yeah. And if there are any questions in your YouTube also, Betty,
they are
just
here.
check if there are any
They
questions
are.
in YouTube.
I've got them.
So
I've got them,
please
Dr.
pick
Bhatt.
up. Yeah. So
Yeah.
please pick up some from there.
Okay.
Yes.
Sure. So Angela George wants to know, or rather would want you to give an example for teaching creatively and teaching for creativity.
Right. Very, very simply. Now, when I teach creatively at the university level, when I'm teaching a text, I don't go to the text immediately. I bring in a lot of things in the media. If I'm doing Antony and Cleopatra, I bring in different versions of Cleopatra. We discuss them. We do all of that, and then we get to the actual play. Because by then the students have a very, very wide perspective and they start viewing from different angles. Now, this is teaching creatively. But when I am teaching for creativity, I take the backstage. I form groups of learners, maybe this is just one of the cases, and knowing that there are some students who are extremely interested in media and films, I would ask them to come up with little clippings of different interpretations of the characters of Antony and Cleopatra. You see? So here I am encouraging them to do the work and encouraging their creativity rather than saying, oh, see how brilliantly I teach. When I do that, I'm occupying center stage. But when I am, now suppose there is a modern rendering or of a play, very, very different. And the verbal linguistics students would be more attuned to that. Then what are the differences in language, in sounds, in rhythms? I would encourage them to explore. I don't do the exploration. I don't want to shine. I want them to shine. That is the difference.
Thank you.
Okay.
Dipti comments that today's generation learns very well with technology, and parents complain about how much technology. And thus, there is another comment or another person who wants you to know, then how do we help control the screen time that the
Do
students
you
spend?
believe, do you believe that children will remain hooked to their electronic gadget if you tell them an exciting story? It's never happened in my experience. It's never happened. They will get attracted to technology. That's all right. We don't have to fight it. It's there. But can we give them something richer than technology? Obviously, the machine is not capable of thinking the way we are. So I can tell you very honestly, at British Council, at American Library, we've done a lot of storytelling sessions. And we don't bring in too much of technology during our storytelling sessions. And the kids love it. They're hooked. The room next to ours is where the parents sit. They rush to the loo, say hi to their parents and come back. So if we give them something which is rich and fun, and I think to be a good teacher, you have to be a good child. You have to be a child at heart. Just as to be a good writer of children's stories, you need to be a child at heart. So what do the children really want? That's the title of my book. And I know that children want fun, and so do I. So if you can create a rich experience and not fight technology, but create that rich experience. Do you want to listen to that story of Peppa Pig for the 50th million time on your device? Or I have a very exciting story for you today, which maybe I won't tell tomorrow. See what the child does.
Yeah.
It's
Because absolutely, as you said, you can't fight technology.
No, don't fight it. Don't fight it. Again, don't be anti it. It's there. Let it be there. It's okay. But we, with our own creativity and joy, if we can create something better, why not?
True.
I mean, so many parents come and tell me, my kids don't read. And my question is, how much do you read? You don't read. And what do they expect the children to read? Boring encyclopedias? Are you crazy? Are you kidding? What can you not do through storytelling? You know, I'm just doing my next webinar is on creating sliding door stories and how you empathetically enter into somebody's world with the kind of stories you narrate. You can open up vistas. And when the child is fussing around and saying, no, I'm going to listen to only my Peppa Pig. Great. I'm going to tell daddy a story. Sit that poor man down and tell him a story. And then the kid will say, oh, daddy is having so much fun, more fun than I'm having. Let me join in. Get them to join in. Get them to join. They will. Kids are beautiful. They will take what we give. We give them violence, they become violent. Don't blame them. Today's kids are violent. Of course they are violent. We give them violent video games. We give them violent computer games. There is so much in the violence in the world. We are constantly reporting it on the media. What do you expect children to be other than violent? So it all begins with us, even here. Have I answered that question? I don't know.
I think you have, definitely, definitely. And now I can see just one more question here. Um, how can we improve higher order thinking in a classroom?
Very good question. Um, there will be, I certainly believe that when we are planning learning experiences, not teaching experiences, that is clear now. When we are planning our learning experiences, we should grade the skills and gradually get our students to move to the higher level. If there are some students who quickly demonstrate these high level cognitive abilities, then we give them more challenging tasks without making them feel that they are very special. We can do that. We can do that in a classroom. I mean, in my classroom in the university, I've always had a mixed bag with kids not even being able to converse in English and doing MA with English. So how do you bring them out? How do you draw them out? How do you get them to really learn the language without feeling diffident? Firstly, the rule of thumb in class, nobody laughs at anyone else. And we are only going to work in teams and we're going to work in groups. And how quickly several of them are capable of high level cognitive skills, but not being able to express them adequately in their language. So again, as a learning facilitator, you just know that these are children who need to be helped differently. You grade your learning tasks in such a way that you move from the simplest to the most complex, which is one of the basic rules of education.
True, true. Right. Yeah. And okay, in the meantime, there's just one question, and I think this will be the last question that we will be taking for today. How does one eliminate the competitive nature from the school system or from education?
Which nature? I didn't get you. What
The
nature?
competitive nature.
Well, that's a huge question because, as I say in my TEDx talk, it requires a total overhauling of the system. And the overhauling has to be at every level, at the level of formulating teaching objectives, learning outcomes, teaching pedagogies, and most importantly, stop testing and move on to assessment, where you look at the process rather than the product.
Right.
So it requires a complete sea change. And again, I feel that if teachers, more and more teachers and parents show the desire for this kind of thing to end, because we know what competition does. How much of competition do we really need? As much as salt in food. We don't need more. But we add a dollop and it spoils everything. And it creates neurosis among the young. And you can't really enjoy learning under pressure. The day I knew I had to stop studying maths, hallelujah, I was free. I felt that way, you know. So, I mean, the pressure that we put on our kids is insane. No wonder they don't enjoy it. So, we parents, teachers, policymakers, all of us have to work together to bring about that change.
Hmm.
And the 100th monkey, remember? Change has to happen if we work, but not if we say, oh, I'm small fry. What change can I make? They won't listen to me. Okay, they won't listen to you forever and a day. Then don't complain.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Uh, I think the little learnings that we're taking back today are reinforced all the more because of the lovely, lovely stories that you have narrated to us. Because when you listen to a story, it just remains with you. And the key learning for me, and I'm sure that would be probably the same for most of the participants here, is that don't just complain about the current situation. Don't just try to look at easy solutions to again, the situation that we are in. But if you want to make a change, be the change, be reflective, think differently, think not just for yourself, but for people around you, look at understanding the systems around you and how they can be made more and more open, and how thus you can work collaboratively and in a very, very humane fashion. I think this has been by far one of the most enriching and the most engaging webinar, and which is going to, leave for me at least loads of moments for me to go back, reflect on, challenge my own ideas, belief systems. And I am not sure, but I really hope that when I go back to my class, I will be at least a teacher who's changed at least so much. And I truly hope that that's one life skill of adaptability, of change that I can take to my classroom. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you very
Betty?
much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Over to
Thank
you.
you for your attention. Thank you for giving me the opportunity today.
Betty?
Dr. Ban, ma'am.
Yeah.
Betty, you have to unmute her.
Yeah, she is, ma'am. She just muted her.
You
Ma'am,
keep me muted
yeah,
all
there
through,
you
so I keep on clicking on that. Dr. Vivina, Kumi, that was absolutely amazing. Can't thank you enough. And we are going to call you back soon. I can see in the chat box, every other participant is saying we want more of you. So we are going to get back to you. We want more of you. And very important thing is not just listen and leave it here, not just be in awe and then say, okay, fine, we forget about it. What's very important is that after the webinar, each one of us takes at least something and brings that change in themselves. That is true learning. So I'm sure each one of us will have something that we'll take home and try to imbibe and try to bring that change in ourselves. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kumi, Panchikar ma'am, and Dr. Ban. We will, ma'am, Dr. Kumi, if you would just wait, we would like to take a group photograph. I request everybody to please switch on their cameras.
Is it done? Is Yukti doing the honors?
Yes, ma'am, she is.
Okay, so are we done?
Just one more screen, I think.
Yeah, it's done.
Yes.
Yeah, we're done now. We're done. Thank you very much, Yuki. Thank you, Panchikar ma'am, for doing the introduction and the closing. Thank you, Dr. Kumi, for being here. It was definitely a very enlightening and very enriching experience. And I am personally very, very thrilled that, whenever I hear the name Rudolf Steiner, it's like my ears are there. And, he's one of my favorite persons, and I just love reading about him and hearing about him. So I was hoping you would speak a little bit more about him, but maybe some other time. Thank you once again to all the participants for being here and being part of the webinar today. Thank you for all your cooperation with keeping your mics on mute and your videos switched off. The feedback link is being posted in the chat right now. I request everybody to please fill, oh, I'm so fill the feedback link, and it's only for 20 minutes from now. So please ensure that you are updating all the details appropriately. We're still getting a few emails with either incorrect Gmail spelling or .com spellings. Please do double check your email IDs and your names before you submit the feedback form. I got a couple of queries for the last set of feedback, whether, because the names were not correctly filled and certificates went with just Miss and Mr. on it. Please, from your end, do check that so that we can ensure that the certificates reach you correctly. That's it. So for next week, we will see you again on Wednesday and Friday We have the topics of Let's Talk Math happening on Wednesday. Our resource person is Mrs. Tamara Pell. And on Friday, we would have Coping with COVID-19, Perspective of Persons with Visual Impairment. And our resource person would be Ms. Nandini Raval. The registration forms have already been opened up. Kindly go ahead and register as soon as possible. Have a lovely weekend ahead, and we will catch you again on.
Betty?
Ma'am, do you want to say something?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, you're on. Yes, you are.
She's muted
Ma'am,
again.
ma'am, aap mat karo.
Yeah, you're unmuted
Done.
now.
Muting me. Yes. Please tell them about the resource person for the next webinar. Is a lady who's kind of, does magic with math. And she's coming, online, of course, from Israel. And she's been working with children with disabilities in Mumbai in SPJ Sadhana School. She has a vast experience in working with math and with children with disabilities. So it's again those who really feel maths is difficult, and particularly teaching maths to children with disabilities. So how you do that, she is a great resource to learn it from. And then the next webinar is Blind People's Association in Ahmedabad. She's the managing director of BPA, Ms. Nandini Raval, a great resource person, those who are from disability sector, particularly from visual impairment. She needs no introduction. Again, a great, great orator. So please come back. We have something very interesting lined up for you. Till then, bye-bye. Take care. Stay safe. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Bye-bye.
Bye.